everyone. Welcome to a session of the Belongg Book Club reading. I'm Lasya and I'm the community manager of Belongg. And Belongg is a social venture that focuses on promoting diversity and inclusion in cities, societies, and organizations. We do this through our inclusive housing service, our inclusive mental health collective. We do this through our research collective and also a Belongg Circle, which is a representation database. Other than this, we also have the studio Belongg, which is a communication service channel. We are here today with the Belongg Book Club and Library, which has been active for over a year now. And we primarily focus on talking about inclusion and diversity and themes surrounding identity through literature and other mediums of pop culture. We have been doing author readings and book readings, and we also did a 4-day-long Diversity and Inclusion Literature Festival in July. And this particular book reading session, or rather poetry reading session today, is featuring a book called Isolocation. And as you can guess, it's about poetry that has been written during the pandemic. And the poems in Isolocation reflect our shared reality during the COVID-19 pandemic, with strong themes of feminism, family, love, mental health, and the current socio-political climate. The poets conjure joy, pain, desire, acceptance, and catharsis with verses that reach out to touch the reader in the times of social distancing. We have the editors, Nirav and Ishmeet, here today, and we also have all the poets who are going to read out some of their poems from the book. I'm actually going to pass this over to Nirav, who's going to talk about the publishing house and the book a little bit, and then to Ishmeet. Nirav, if you can take it.
Yes. Hi, Lasya. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ishmeet. Good evening to all the poets. Welcome to the book club session. I have been following Belongg since past 1 year. I have taken great interest in going through all the YouTube videos over the last 1 year. So a publication house is called as Ratio Auream Publishers. We founded in 2018. This is our first book. Isolocation is our first book. We have been doing publication since January of 2020. We did zines for the first 2 months, and then this is the first book that we have done. The idea came about for the book was during one of the online poetry session that we were doing, and I just propped the idea to Ishmeet, and Ishmeet was on board, and then we selected the prompts for next 30 days, and we straight away went into the whole idea of making the book. So that has been the whole journey, and then after that 2 months of editing process, whole selection and the whole curation process regarding the book. So it took us good amount of time and mental space, first of all, to get this book right. And we are so glad we have so many influential people whose writings we have been reading are there, like have written blurbs for us, like Danish Hussain, Kiran Manral. The big for us was Ranjit Hoskote, Sumana Roy, and there are a few others more. So I will let Ishmeet talk about the whole curation process and everything more about the book. Please, Ishmeet, go ahead.
Thank you, Nirav. I just wanted to say that this book started out as a shared exercise to maybe process our own grief and to process what we were all going through during the lockdown and during the pandemic. Because when the lockdown was announced at the end of March, we felt like we were not anchored anywhere. All the poetry events that we used to attend were gone, and we had no outlet. And so when National Poetry Writing Month came along in April, we decided that let's do a challenge where a group of people write one poem every single day. And we would, of course, provide the prompts to them. A lot of poets joined that exercise. Over 25 to 30 poets were there who joined this exercise. We had hundreds of poems by the end of the month. And from those hundreds of poems, we put together 44 poems, which are in this book. And there's a very interesting collaboration of 9 poets writing one single poem, which is the title poem called Isolocation in the book. And I think that is reflective of what a lot of people who come together for one shared reason can achieve. It not only gives you catharsis, but also makes you feel like you're not alone. And everybody who's read the book has had this feedback for us that this book made them feel like there were a lot of other people going through the same emotions and the same feelings that they were going through. And I think that is the USP of this book. Back to you, Lasya, now.
Thank you so much for that, Ishmeet. Before we actually go on to poetry readings, I would just like to run everyone through the, everyone who's watching and everybody at the panel, through the format that we'll be following today, which is we'll do poetry reading first. So all the poets here and the editors have picked some poems from Isolocation that we'll be reading to you. And these have several themes, the pandemic itself, feminism, or mental health. And after, so I think Ishmeet will introduce every poet and the poets will read their poems, after which I'll ask Ishmeet and Nirav and the poets some questions regarding the books and the themes that they followed in the book. So Ishmeet, if you can start with introducing the first poet and they can start reading out, and then take that forward to the next poet. I'll just give it over to you for the next, say, 15-20 minutes, if you can do one after the other. Yeah.
Thank you, Lasya. So the first poet that I'm going to introduce is Baisali Chatterjee Dutt, who is actually the author of the first official poem which was selected for this book. And that poem was titled Quarantine, but that's not what she's going to be reading today. You have to read the book to understand the depth she goes into to describe even the normal situations you see every day in a very profound way. And I think once you listen to her, you will be her fans forever. So here's Baisali for you.
Ishmeet, you always say the nicest things, and I hope everybody feels the same about this poem, because I know you're especially fond of this poem of mine, and I hope other people relate to it as much as you did. The poem that I'm going to read for everyone today is called A Matter of Mourning. As dust settles down on your listless bones, and clouds move like empty thoughts across the landscape of your mind, let dusk draw a curtain across the sun. Say goodbye to the day, but don't overdo it. She will be back with sweat and heat, offering a mango as an apology. Let the moon bear witness to your nightly duties to family and man, as he dries the laundry and hums a lullaby off key. His voyeuristic tendencies shame him enough to make him disappear around the block every now and again, but his curiosity gets the better of him, and soon enough, he's back for more. Come dawn and the curtains will rise on a brand new morning, yours to recycle the leftovers from the day before. This never-ending cycle of chop, cook, chew, and excrete will carry on and on and on. Plan your escape route through the bushes on a moonless night when the smell of salt will guide you to another life. Are you brave enough? Will morning show the day?
Thank you, Vaishali. That was brilliant. And as you said, this is one of my favorite poems of yours because it's so simple, yet it is so deep when you, it's my favorite line. I think I've said this line to hundreds of people every single day, where I quote Vaishali and I say, when she says, let the moon bear witness to your nightly duties to family and man. There's this much words and so much meaning. Thank you, Vaishali. That was brilliant as usual.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to introduce Sudeep Pagedar. Sudeep is a dear, dear friend. And interestingly, he also raps. But today, I think he has something very unusual in store for you. So here's introducing Sudeep.
Thank you so much, Ishmeet. I do rap, but and I would love to rap at some during one of our sessions. But as you said, today we're here for the poems from Isolocation. This is my copy. I must say this about the publishers. They've been very sweet to all of us. These are hardcover copies that they sent us, and it's a lovely feeling to own and to hold a book containing some of your favorite poems. And on that note, I would love to read this one poem. It's called Finger Pointing. But the way it's written is, I don't know if you can see this. I'll just try to show it to you. It says finger pointing, but then it's like a portmanteau of painting and pointing. So I've tried to merge these two words, cocoon them together. So I'll just call this finger pointing. Tariq pe tariq, and week by week, we accuse, and we stand accused, of sitting down, legs crossed, in protest against a travesty of justice. The courtroom is all around us, replete with lawyers, liars, judges, executioners, and a jury of our fears. Trials and tribulations begin with a gavel banging down. Sounds like a tweet, a notification saying, "You've got mail." And ping goes your inbox. You're in a box, you're in jail, imprisoned by trolls who police the roads where internet traffic ebbs, flows, and jams, when hashtags crash and bystanders watch with popcorn in hands. But no one understands what's really going on, because I'm just here for the comments. Keyboard warriors fighting battles that can never be won. Some do it for justice and some do it for fun. But there's always collateral damage when there's warring with uncivil sparring, resulting in civilian casualties that are ignored because hashtag collateral damage. We are both, you and I, social media soldiers, captaining Instagram, majoring in Facebook, generally on Twitter. I stand in judgment of your judgment, of my judgment. And while we could inception this forever, I will leave with my totem and move to another post by some idiot I need to roast, leaving a haha emoji when they have poured their heart out and are soliciting. Heart reacts only.
Thank you, Sudeep. And something which is very unique about this poem is that when you read it on the page, there are actual emojis that Sudeep has used. And this is perhaps the first time I and a lot of the senior poets that we sent the book to, that they have seen an emoji in a poem. So it has been a wonderful way to get to know that something can be done when you bend genres and you destroy genres and you are like making all these puns and wordplay, which I love, of course. So Sudeep, thank you so much for this reading. And next, I'm going to introduce Dhruvi. Dhruvi and I were together at a poetry retreat, and we basically lived together for 7 days. And I think I got to know her, and she got to know me in a way that it can only be done when you're all together for so many days, 24/7. And the way she writes, it's also very searing to hear even simple words where her imagination and her metaphors are so beyond what you could ever think about. Like, I literally, my mind goes out of the window because she makes me so high on the brilliance, basically. So I think that's the best kind of high to have. So Dhruvi coming up next.
Hi, thank you, Ishmeet. Like everyone says, you're too kind with all your introductions and your praises. This was actually the poem that I'm going to read, one of the metaphors that came up in the poetry retreat. And it's one of Ishmeet's favorite metaphors because you don't usually think of this word like that. When we were doing the exercise for the Facebook group where we were writing the poem, I had no expectation that this would go into a book and that, we would all be collaborating in such a nice way. And when eventually the book was published and it was in my hands, it was such a surreal feeling, like, okay, we achieved something in the lockdown. And I'm just so glad that we went through with it. And I'm so glad for like you and Nirav that y'all put this book together. Y'all gave us something to actually like document this time that probably we're never going to go through again, hopefully never going to go through again in this lifetime. So I'm going to start. This one is called This That I Do. And it goes like this. I look for old journals, ruled pages scribbled with hasty thoughts, ink for a pen that cannot possibly flow faster than the chatter in my brain, but it will spill eventually into words that make little to no sense. I can't find what I'm looking for. I don't want to do this. Words have been my friends, more on paper than in conversations. Nowadays, they elude me. I don't write as much. I don't read as much. Books have adorned my shelves with top folds twisted upwards, yellowed after years of turning beneath my chipped fingernails. But now, they sit pretty, still, with perfect spines, no cracks from sleeping open on their backs. Blowing dust off their tops is their only chance to be touched. I have found new ways to kill time. I scroll my Instagram feed mindlessly. I have a ton of information, but no memory of a source to credit it back to. I open and close browser windows, start and stop television shows. I go out to bars and watch everyone drink. Alcohol doesn't really give me a kick. I don't want to do this. I am missing something. I am missing the thrill of learning, the wholesome satisfaction of creating something, the joy of discovery in characters I'll never meet, but will always know. I am lost. I am not in touch with myself. I don't want to do this. This that I do every day, this not getting out of bed until it's late, this tuning into work I don't understand, this eating food I haven't prepared, this I do to keep up, to cope, if you may, with the demands of a life I don't enjoy living. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruvi. I think this poem captures perfectly how a lot of us have felt during the lockdown, because in the starting, everyone was like, okay, now I'm going to start learning to cook, or I'm going to take up a new hobby, and I'm going to pass my time in my house. Some of us threw ourselves into activism and, trying to help the people who were trying to move back to their hometowns and home villages. And all of that has taken a toll on our mental health, and how much we've become sort of blocked in a sense. After a time, we sort of all got blocked, where nothing creative was happening, nothing which made us excited for the next day. And as Dhruvi mentioned, the spine metaphor is my favorite metaphor, because when you think of a spine, you think of your own back. You never think of it in the way of the spine of a book, and how if you were reading books, there would be cracks on its spine. And that is just brilliant, brilliant it is. So thank you so much, Dhruvi, for that. Next, I would like to invite Manini. And I've said this over and over again. What I love, love, love about Manini is that everything about her poetry is in your face. It's the truth, plain and simple. She will not dress it up. She will not coddle you. She will just tell you the way it is. And that hits hard. So with that, I will invite Manini next.
Thank you so much, Ishmeet. I just want to echo, what everyone just said here, that you're very kind. You and Nirav, y'all have been excellent guides. And now I think we should, call all of us friends. Like, y'all have been fantastic during this entire journey. And during such a terrible time in the year, all of us share this fantastic gift of a book and a poetry coming out in this wonderful way. So thank you so much, both of you, Ishmeet and Nirav. Thank you. This poem is called Nomenclature. Family, career, success. He is a man. His identity is his name. Family and children. She is a woman. Her identity is a wife and a mother. Career and success. Her identity is a working woman. Her identity reduced to the roles that she plays in her life. The world tells her that she has to choose between these roles, because there's no way she can have both, because there's no way she'll be known by her name, because she will be known by a man's name. Perhaps this will be different tomorrow, when I am known as me and not as a role I play. Thank you.
Thank you, Manini. What I love about this poem is how sometimes we don't see things that are right in front of us. For example, our surnames, and how we carry the weight of a surname which, if not belonging to our husbands, it does belong to our fathers most of the time, and how that surname carries a gendered and a casteist legacy of things that you don't even think about it twice. It's your name, it's your surname, but then what does that surname mean? What does it carry with it? And I just love this poem because of that. Thank you, Manini. And the next person I'd like to call is Nadeem Raj. So Nadeem, I met in the spoken word circuit, and there's always been this quality about Nadeem where he makes you feel very comfortable. He draws you into into his own story. And the poems he sent us for this book and which are in this book are, I would say, the most relatable ones and the most subtle ones, because his poems escalate like there is a rush of water, but you only feel it when it touches you finally. You can see it coming towards you and feel it. So Nadeem, please join us next.
Thank you, Ishmeet. Thank you, Nirav. I don't think I've ever had somebody my poetry in as beautiful terms as you just did. um, Thank you for all the kindness. Thank you for all the love. It has been a difficult time. It continues to be a difficult time. So obviously that is something that we are working on. So I did some during the pandemic when the lockdown started. I thought I'll write a poem a day. The lockdown lasted longer than my resolve, but I did get some good ones. And on one of those
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think, Nadeem, you're having some issues with your internet. Lasya, how do we want to take this forward?
If Nadeem can do it without the video, the audio will be more clearer, and we can superimpose something.
Okay, Nadeem, can you try it without the video, please? Okay.
Or we could give it to somebody else, and Nadeem can do it afterwards.
Yes, let's do that for now. So I'm going to invite Thushara next. So Thushara was one of the most consistent writers during our exercise of this month-long challenge of writing poems. And I would look forward to Thushara's poems every single day. I would wait and wait and wait. And sometimes she would post it very late at like 11 p.m. And I would be waiting, where is Thushara's poem? Because Thushara has this streak of being a revolutionary in her writing, and I just love to see when women do something like this, when through simple words they can start a revolution. So that's me introducing Thushara Reddy to you. Thushara, please take it up next.
Thank you so much, Ishmeet. I hope you guys can hear me. Okay. So I'm very happy. I'm grateful, thrilled to be part of two organizations here, like both Isolocation and Ratio Auream Publishers have supported us. And through this wonderful initiative that they took up during the pandemic when we actually needed it, I think. And also in equal measure to be part of this event by Belongg. It's an organization I've been following to some extent over the past few months. And their heart lies in offering an inclusive space for people struggling, individuals struggling with identity, mental health, and more. So these are issues close to my heart. So I'm thrilled to be part of both these, an event by both these organizations. So going on to the poem itself, the poem is called Small Truths. So I think it touches upon suicidal ideation, which has been a part of my life for many years now. I have a borderline diagnosis. So suicidal ideation has been part of my life for a very long time now, and this touches upon that. It's a very short poem. It goes like this. Small truths. Nothing in me cares to nurture anything I have come to understand. I can keep nothing alive, self included. These bones, they're tired, let them be. These words unnecessary, let them die. Thank you.
Thank you, Thushara. Though this is a small poem, as you said, it's a short poem. It says so much about what we've all been struggling with, especially with what's been going on in the media lately regarding mental health and suicide, and how important it is to not only express to yourself how you're feeling, but also to let out the words. And maybe if we can put those words on paper, maybe we can say these words to the people who care about us too. And maybe we can seek help in a better way once we verbalize even to ourselves what we are feeling, and not be held back by shame and judgment. And I'm actually tearing up a little bit thinking about it also, but it's been a difficult time for everyone who's been struggling with mental health issues, and I think it has exacerbated because of all the things that are going on around us. And if you go on social media, you become even more entrapped in the whole problematic dialogue that is going on. So I really love that you had the courage, I would say, to say things which people might hesitate in saying. And I love poetry for this reason, because you can say things which you could otherwise not have said. So thank you, Thushara, for that. And I'm gonna ask Nadeem to try again if it's possible. Otherwise, I will read out your poem, Nadeem. Please try again.
No, I it'll hopefully work this time. Okay. So this one is called A Small Scary List. A indicative list of things that also scare me in the lockdown. Being stuck with my cooking. Breaking my glasses and squinting at everything for weeks, making it permanent. Slipping in the bathroom, banging my head on the sink, and passing out with nobody to find me. Gas leaks as I sleep. Calling home without answer. Going to the store, but everyone breaking the queue as I stand in the stand. Contact. Cutting myself in the kitchen and trying to go to the hospital, not finding any transport, finding out that I do bleed a different color and become a pariah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadeem. But I think I'm going to read this poem once again. It's a short poem, but I'm going to read it again just for the sake of nobody, so that nobody misses it. It's called A Small Scary List by Nadeem Raj. A short, indicative list of things that also scare me in the lockdown. Being stuck with my cooking. Breaking my glasses and squinting at everything for weeks, making it permanent. Slipping in the bathroom, banging my head on the sink, and passing out with nobody to find me. Gas leaks as I sleep. Calling home without answer. Going to the store, but everyone breaking the queue as I stand waiting in the sun and the store downing its shutters. Forgetting the feel of close human contact. Cutting myself in the kitchen and trying to go to the hospital, but not finding any transport, or finding out that I do bleed a different color and become a pariah. And what I love about this poem is how it starts with those small anxieties that all of us are dealing with, especially at the start of the lockdown. I was also living alone. I moved in the middle of the lockdown so that I could be with people, with flatmates, because I could not live alone because of all of these small anxieties. It is something that I think all of us have gone through, especially the people who are living by themselves and not seeing a human being in their own house. It has been very, very difficult. So thank you, Nadeem, for that. I will call upon Anjali next. Anjali is a very different kind of poet, I would say. All the poets in this anthology are very different in terms of their personalities and their styles. And what I love about Anjali is that she will take you to a world of metaphors, and then make you reject them and tell you that you are blind because you're not seeing what is really in front of you. And that is an ability which I find very intimidating about a poet, because they can actually make you all shaken up and realize that you've not been seeing what is happening around you. So Anjali, up next.
Thank you, Ishmeet. No one makes you feel as good as Ishmeet does. Yeah, so I'm going to read a poem called The Other Fairy Tale. There she was, dressed in beautiful red drapes with her ass hanging out and her breast peeking from the loose blouse. Epitome of provocation. There he was, his tongue dripping like a dog's and his tail wagging like a hungry monster, ready to devour his favorite meal. God's marvelous creation. Every story has somehow morphed into this one in my head. The innocence of fairy tales is long gone, and severed heels seem like the most sensible mythos. Maybe the beast has finally risen from the dead. I don't have any more metaphors. Nothing describes a monster better than a monster, and nothing speaks better of beauty than the lascivious gaze of a sex-crazed man. Testosterone, they say, has power over sweet, innocent minds. Then tell me, honey, what should the estrogen do? Cower away in the world called shame, hide in the valley of danger? Oh, or best, live on the street of terror? Tell me, love, what should the estrogen do? Try and whimper or scream and shout? Oh no, voices you can't deal with, I'd better just wait it out. The heroine settles with the role of a damsel, but the distress never gets solved anymore. Chaos and hatred and wretchedness dress the prince. And there you have it, folks. A freshly baked, dark, twisted lore. A new Hunger Game every day, a new never after in every story. A more gruesome monster in every tale. Mummy, read me a happy story, please, once again. That's it.
Thank you, Anjali. What I love about this particular poem is how normalized it is to for people to say boys will be boys and to blame hormones for everything. That, oh, it's the testosterone that makes you aggressive. It's the testosterone that makes people molest other people and sexually harass other people. And when you ask the question, where should my estrogen go, and also you shine a light through this poem on the absolute binaries that we've just accepted as fact, that yes, testosterone is one, estrogen is one. This is a binary world, and no one questions it, no one asks why this is this way. And there are female athletes who've been asked to lower their testosterone levels in order to be able to compete in formal sports, which makes you question who decided this, who decided what is the level of estrogen, who decided what is the level of testosterone, who decided that testosterone makes you a man, and who decided that estrogen makes you a woman, and who decided that everything is to blame upon hormones, and put us into these boxes of gender, and what happens to us is because of these binaries. So I think this poem really makes you question what you are seeing every day in all these fairy tales, in all these movies. Why is it always the same story over and over again? So this is why I love this poem. Thank you, Anjali.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I think I'm going to read one of my own poems. So as we said, there's a strong theme of feminism that runs through this book. And I think two of my poems very directly reference feminism. And one of them is called The Floor is Lava. The floor is lava. When you are someone who is not a man, stepping outside is akin to taking off in a space shuttle. One small step for man, one giant abyss for you. You gear yourself up. A precisely placed dupatta covers and patches on every inch of your skin like an airtight spacesuit, lest you burn yourself in the static, toxic, unforgiving space. Catcall asteroids hurling in your orbit the weightlessness of vulnerability when a stranger gropes your hip, deplete the limited oxygen that you carry on your back. You have trained for this adventure sport all your life. Every time you step outside, because the inside is not safe either. Suspended at the threshold for a microsecond, life flashes before your eyes. Is this the day you collide with a rogue planet? Is this the day you will die? Thank you. That was my poem, The Floor is Lava, because we've seen a lot of talk about the rise of domestic violence incidents during the lockdown. And it really makes you, feel helpless for a lot of reasons, because there's nothing much that you can do at this time. It's very easy to say, stay home, stay safe, but not everyone's home is safe. And that has been particularly hard for women and queer people and people who ID as non-binary or are trans persons. It's been really, really hard for people who don't conform to what society has told us in any kind of way. And especially for people who have mental illness as well, it has been difficult to be shut in the home with their family members who might not be the most understanding people in the world. With that, Lasya, I have come to the end of the readings, and if you have any questions for us.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for your poem. It was great. And thanks everybody. Anjali, Dhruvi, Manini, Nadeem, Sudeep, Thushara, and Baisali, who's not here.
I would also, sorry, I would like to interrupt and mention that Gayatri is not here. Gayatri is also a brilliant poet, could not make it today.
Yeah. So Gayatri could not make it, and Baisali had to leave midway. So so thank you so much, each one of you, for these poems, for reading out these poems for us today. I actually have a all-encompassing question. First, if Nirav and you could take it, and then anybody who has the rest of the poets who could think of an answer could take it up, is that there is so much conversation around, we are in a global pandemic, and we need to document emotions. There's obviously a lot of documentation with respect to news or whatever that's happening, going on, documenting the things that are happening out in the world. But what I really like about the fact that Isolocation came into being is the fact that we are in some ways documenting emotions through this pandemic and through this book, through this anthology of poetry. What my question to you guys would be, what was the idea behind it? How did it originate? And tell me a little bit about the timing. Since you guys started off in 2018 with your publishing house, why this book and why now? And how long did it take to come up with this idea? And I actually have a follow-up question to that, which I'll come back to you later. But why and why now? If you can tell me that.
I'll take this up.
Yes.
So going back to the origins of the publishing house, I was sitting, so I am a co-founder of a book club called as Broke Bibliophiles Bombay Chapter, which is based in Bombay. We have around 5,000 members, and we have a Chennai chapter. So I was in Chennai for my cousin's wedding, and I was meeting the co-founder of the Chennai chapter, and I was meeting a very reverend author, Sharanya Manivanan. I'm sure you know, everyone knows of her. So we were just meeting for breakfast one morning on the day of my cousin was getting married. And we were talking about publication houses and how they're ill-treating the authors and poets, and how much preferences each poets get or each author gets, and the amount of books that are published over the years. So considering I had a very great in-look in terms of how publishing houses work, thanks to a lot of friends who work in publishing houses, and to working with publishing houses for my book club, promoting their books and doing cross-platform promotion and etc. all of that. So that kind of egged me. I know a lot of stuff, and when an author also comes to you and tells you, oh, you know a lot of stuff that even the authors don't know. So I was of the view, okay, why not do this? What is going to happen? I'm going to fail. I need to shut it down. I'll happily shut it down. At least I'll have a try at it. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the whole breakfast happened for 3 hours, and I took around a lot of time to think about it, whether should I do it or not. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I just made up a logo on Canva, like we all use for our creatives. I just made up a very basic logo, and it was my cousin's wedding, and they were playing Nirvana songs. I have no idea what they were playing Nirvana songs, and I was like, okay, I love Nirvana. My name is Nirav, so sometimes it gets misspelled as Nirvana, thanks to my foreign colleagues and all. So I was like, why not name it as? So it was named as Nirvana Publishers. 6 o'clock, I called Ishmeet. I'm in between a wedding, and I call Ishmeet. I explain her the whole thought process, why I want to do this. 6:30, I end the call with her, and she's like, okay, I'm on board. And we literally hit it off from there. We made all the social media pages, all the website and everything. But life happened to us. We did not know that we are going to get so much overwhelming happening around it, and a lot of people coming and telling us, oh, this is a brave step. And not a lot of people do publishing houses as a startup, right? So we thought, okay, let's give it, let's sleep over it. So we slept over it for a year, and then we thought, okay, 2020 might be the year we want to begin. And so this book, actually, we had no plans of doing the book, to be very honest, in first place. We just wanted to do an activity around lockdown, because we were all going through a lot of stuff. I was going through a lot of stuff. So I told Ishmeet, let's do something and see whether if it works out. If it works out, it's great. If it can be made into a book, that is lovely. If it cannot be made into a book, that's also fine. Right. So I was like, okay, so 10:30 in the night, I call her and I tell her I want to do National Poetry Writing Month. Let's form a group on Facebook. So we have a group on Facebook called as Aurea Writing Circle. We formed it specifically for National Poetry Writing Month, and we told everyone to come and contribute their writings over there. And if they're really good, like we did not promise them as such, but we told them if they're really good, we might take it into the book that we want to do. Right. So then everyday basis, we were putting up all the prompts that were available to us. We put out the prompts on a daily basis. I think by 26th or by 27th of April, almost last 2 days, 3 days later, around before that, I figured out in my head, okay, this can be a book. Because by that time, me and Ishmeet were also starting to compile the poems as such. Right. So we started it. So, it was really, really great to see so many poems, to read so many poems at once. And yeah, I mean, it just hit it off from there. So 30th of April, we collected almost 150, 170 poems. And Ishmeet and I took approximately 20-25 days to figure out the final set of poems, 44, 45 poems. The amount of legwork that has gone, like from contacting each and every poet. I mean, Ishmeet can elaborate on that. Oh God, the amount of legwork, the amount of communication. And yes, we still have our day jobs to finish. So we are trying to do our day job at the same time, finding some breather space, and also, starting to collate the poems. I have sat with Ishmeet on every other day in the night from 10 to 12, and we have shortlisted poems. We have slept over a few poems to see, okay, whether it's really good or not, whether we can really make it or not. And yeah, it was done. And after that, it was just the point of contacting a printer and just editing it, just making a flow of the book, getting the introduction done. If you have read the introduction is one of the beautiful introductions that I have ever read in a book before. I'm not being biased. Of course, I'm being a bit biased, but yeah, the introduction is one of the best introductions that I have ever read in any book or in any poetry anthology. But yeah, I mean, and then we had a backing of so many people. Like, we literally asked for everyone's help, and everyone was so happy to help us. Like, in getting the book in form and shape right now it is. I mean, Ishmeet, please elaborate on other stuff. I can go on and on and on.
Yeah. So, see, we never started out saying that, oh, let's do an anthology which will have 50 poems by 5 authors. We never had that in our mind.
Yeah,
we just went very organically. We went very organically, poem by poem. So if you notice in the book, it's not like everyone has like 3 poems or there are 4 poems each. It's not even sectioned by poet. It's more sectioned by theme and by what the poets were feeling. So if one author has 3 poems in this, another author might have 6 poems in this book. We just went poem by poem. We never thought about how many authors and how many authors with how many poems each. It just went with the feeling of what feels good, what represents our emotions, and what is technically good in terms of their poetry format and their language and their vocabulary and all of these things. And of course, we did look at themes. We did look at themes when we were setting the book together and I was putting the order together. I remember that it was such a mess. The order was a complete mess. And I was feeling like, oh, I want to give up now and I'll just section them by author and have it together like the other anthologies do. But then I started reading the poems one by one. And I realized that where one poet left off, the next poet began from that thread. And when I finally put the order together, it reads like it's a one person story, but one person who has many personalities and styles of writing. So I think that is something unique which happened in the book. And of course, the introduction by Manisha Lakhe is a 3-page poem in itself. Like, I cannot imagine any prose being as beautiful as the introduction that Manisha Lakhe has written, because of how poetic and how profound it is. And all the people who supported us, Meeta Sen Gupta, who gave us the title Isolocation, which is a unique word which was invented by Meeta Sen Gupta to define being isolated but yet being connected while we are all in different locations. So I think that answers your question, Lasya.
Yeah, and there's a follow-up question to that. Themes like feminism or mental health or family, were they chosen in particular because say we are in the time that we are in, or did it happen because we're in the time that we are in?
I think it just happened because if you look at some of the prompts that we had, for example, one of the prompts was called Xerox, X for Xerox. Now you think about Xerox, what comes to your mind? You will never imagine what kind of diverse poems came out of that one prompt. Someone was writing about how there are duplicity in their beauty standards. Another person wrote about how their genetic offspring doesn't look like their Xerox copy and how that bothers them. Then another person, interpreted it in the way of how their freedom in the world in general was being curtailed because you're supposed to, perform in a certain way professionally. So because the people themselves came up with these things, if I gave a prompt which was M for morning, and Baisali comes up and says, let the moon bear witness to your nightly duties to a family and man, that is something which has come from inside the poets. Even the 2 men who are in this book, Sudeep and Nadeem, both ended up talking about feminism in a way where it was not expected that, I mean, by default, you expect that people who are queer or who are, female gendered, they would come up with more of the feminist content. But Sudeep and Nadeem both touched upon issues so delicately and with such grace by being true allies to the movement. And it's really wonderful to see. So I think it was more because of the times that we are going through, yes, but also because nothing changed. I wrote an article, as Nirav mentioned, we had our day jobs at that time, both of us, and we still do. So I wrote an article because of my job, which talked about how I was feeling about the absence of street harassment because I was not on the street. And if I was on the street, there was like outside the grocery shop, there were like circles drawn 6 feet apart. And I was like, this is the first time I'm in a queue with 15 people and I know that no one is going to grope me today. But, it is so different to imagine that if you think that the danger or the uncomfortable circumstances for not just women, but anyone who is not a man, as I said in my poem, anyone who's not a cis man, any harassment and any bad situations they face, if you think they're only in the outside world, if we are not going outside, it doesn't mean that our problems have disappeared. Our problems are still very much there. Feminism is still very much the need of the hour for the conversation to be had on that topic. And that came out in the poems, because even though the poets were at home, their issues were still the same issues. They still thought about their anxiety. They still thought about their mothers. They still thought about their relationship with their own bodies. And that came out wonderfully.
Thank you so much for that. I actually have a question to any of the poets, if they would like to take it. If any of them have put thought behind this, they could take it and answer this. Which is, if we look at a scenario before the lockdown and post the lockdown, and talking about it in the context of, say, feminism, for example, or mental health, or how family values or binary or harassment works, has there been a way in which you've noticed the change being captured in your own writing? The way these things are playing out on a daily basis, and the way they've played out before the pandemic and after the lockdown. Have you noticed how it has maybe changed in the way you wrote these poems in April? If you've written something like that before the lockdown or something like that. Is there a trend that you've noticed in the way you've written these differently? Anybody, if you could take it, or if anybody has any opinions or thoughts about this, any of the poets. You can unmute yourself automatically and do it.
I would like to take a shot at it, but I don't know if my network will allow me to do that.
Go ahead. Let's hope it does. Yeah.
No, so honestly, I've always been a solitary person. And I've really enjoyed solitude. So there's, of course, a difference between being alone and a difference between being lonely. But I think, and I spent many months being completely alone, and that was being alone. So I think that is a point that, to what extent do all the technology or all the other pieces that we have that will help really matter in the long run. I mean, I was, after a few months, I was like, okay, I would really just not mind going back to office, which is something that I never thought I would say. But because there is just something about close human contact, because what this did is it really drove a wedge between even meeting and interacting for those small moments with people that you need to have in your life. And I think that is something that has profoundly changed my writing. And now, of course, there is, I think that echo, I would say, it comes, it's much more of a black echo of solitude that comes as compared to how it was before.
Anybody else? Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes.
Nadeem, spot on, man. I mean, a lot of what you've said was on my mind. I've been dealing with anxiety for quite some time now. And there's a type of anxiety that doesn't get diagnosed, but certain therapists would tell you, or there are ways to find out or to describe it. High functioning anxiety, where, what ends up happening is, to the outside world and even to yourself and to the world around you, to your family, to your friends, you're doing great, you're doing well, you're doing fine, perhaps even better than usual, better than most other people, your peers, right? But to a person who has high functioning anxiety, the world outside is constantly in flux as much as is the world within. By this, what I mean is, whenever I do something, whether it's writing a poem or whether it's conducting a workshop, I always have this internal pressure, this thing inside my mind, this worry. Is it going to be okay? Am I going to be accepted by people? Is my work going to be accepted by people? And the smallest things in the echo chamber that Nadeem just spoke about become amplified 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. And writing, I think for all of us, for me, definitely is a way to deal with that, is to channel my thoughts in a structured manner. So when I started writing these poems for NaPoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month, with 1618's challenges, I think that I'd like to say, I don't think I've mentioned this to Ishmeet and Nirav before, but thank you for this because this really helped. Having a structure, having a theme to focus your thoughts into really helped me as a person during a time where prior to the lockdown, I had two separate worlds. I had my professional world where I would go outside and do my workshops. And then I would have my world of the internet and social media where I would share random memes or, where I would post things on my Facebook, on my personal Facebook profile. But then the two kind of, they smashed together during the lockdown. They became so inextricably entangled that it was hard to figure out where one ends and where the other begins. So, because everything went online, the workshops, and there was this constant flood of seeing people achieving, and when you're dealing with anxiety, and especially high performing anxiety, you're constantly worried that what you're doing is not enough. So you need to hustle and you need to move, you need to keep moving, otherwise it's not going to be enough. And writing these poems, engaging with the other poets here, reading their poems became a way to isolate oneself from the chaos of that crazy world which the pandemic had given to us, the earth that had become. And I think in my own poems, I found I used to overthink a lot of my poems, but then I think a lot of these poems that went into this book, they flowed. I will definitely say that the lockdown and the pandemic have had something to do with it, but I think it's also a condition of our times. I don't know how different things are going to be after the pandemic ends, because we've moved into a space where we're all used to doing things a certain way now. And that, as far as what I've noticed in my writing is concerned, those are my thoughts on that.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Sorry. Baisali or Dhruvi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. So I think one thing that's become really, really clear during this time is, the importance of me time. Okay, because while I agree with what Nadeem and Sudeep said about being alone and enjoying that solitude, there's a difference between solitude and loneliness. And that's just one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is those of us who are locked in with people that we're seeing day in, day out, 24/7. Okay, and yes, I mean, if we're lucky, we're locked in with those people we love. Okay, people we love and people who love us back. But at the same time, it's relentless. It's 24/7, and you wouldn't think this with family, but there are limits to love as well. And while yes, in the beginning it was all nice and playing Scrabble and Ludo and Pictionary and things like that, but then things did have to fall into some kind of a routine, which with online schooling or with trying to get back into work, and the tensions and the emotions that you would take out of the house, unfortunately you were experiencing them in the house around the people that you love. Okay, which isn't always a very, very healthy thing. I certainly know that in my household, I mean, once we can start moving about freely again, I know my sons are going to want to go for sleepovers just to get away from us. And it's so valid. I know my husband's going to want boys' nights out, which is again valid. I personally am looking forward to just locking myself in a hotel somewhere in the city for 2 whole days and not seeing anyone's faces, because we are, at the end of the day, we are creatures of social habit and social interaction, and we need to see other people as well. So I think this has really, really hit home during the lockdown.
Dhruvi, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, so first of all, that's a really interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. So before the lockdown, I thrived in social situations. Like, I'm somebody who likes going out. I like, even if I'm by myself, I like going to cafes and sitting and writing. Or just everything outside inspires me. And Ishmeet and I did the poetry retreat together, and it was Like, every day we were writing. So the lockdown has impacted me in a way where I don't know where to look for inspiration. And I mean, of course, writing is a solitary act. Like when you're writing, you're by yourself. But this, you're by yourself, and it's not out of choice. It's something that's imposed on you. So my writing has kind of shift. Like it was always inward looking, but it has shifted in the way that I feel like this is the only way I can express myself. Because if I don't write to make sense of all this chaos, then I won't be able to, look back at this time and figure out how I was feeling. So I think that's been the major change.
Okay, thank you so much. I do think we are also running out of time. So if anybody has any parting thoughts, I would like you to go say things. And yeah, Ishmeet.
Sorry. So I wanted to very quickly say that what you mentioned earlier also about documenting our emotions. I do feel like one of the thoughts behind this book for me personally was that 20 years later or 30 years later or 40 years later, if someone asks me, hey, you were alive when the pandemic happened, what really happened then? And because all of the news and the sort of documentation which happens around us is very doubtful sometimes. There are different things being published, different things being said, and you don't really know what is true anymore. And maybe 30 years later they won't know what was true. So but at least I'll have this book, because this is true, this is the truth, this is what we were feeling, even if it makes sense so many years later. Even if it makes sense to one person that they understand what we went through, I think I and Nirav feel very proud of the fact that this is a piece of history. This is not just poems that were written during a lockdown when we were trying to heal each other. This is a piece of what happened during 2020. This is what we have recorded as the absolute truth, which cannot be said for many things that come out around us. And the second thing that I wanted to say very quickly was that we have announced our submissions open for our second anthology, which is going to come out early next year. And you can check out our social media at Ratio Auream Publishers, 1618 Publishers on Instagram. I think Lasya can post the links. Yeah. And do submit. We love authors. We are an author-centric publication. We've always said that we are our center point is the author and how comfortable they are, how we can make them, we can help them reach their fullest potential. All the editing that went into this book, every single poem, every single word, every single sentence, we went over and over it with all the authors. We had so many sessions with each of them. And what you see as the final product is so refined, and I'm really, really proud of it. And that is something which we are looking to emulate in our second anthology as well, which is for short stories and poems both. So if you want to submit your work to us, check us out on social media.
I had a thing
thank
to
you.
say.
Yes.
Yeah. So apart from documenting a lockdown, we also feel an absolute privilege to publish something in this lockdown. A lot of people did not have even the privilege to sit and write. We are so grateful that we have a home above our head. We are seeing people migrate, and the book also in some ways tries to document that migration aspect. And I feel absolute privilege that there are so many people who are involved in the book, starting from Kiran Mandral, Ranjit Hoskote. Sumana Roy was the first one to send us a feedback. Then we have Anukriti Upadhyay, whose Kintsugi, the book was so good. I don't know whether you have read it, but it's such a beautiful book. But yeah, I mean, absolute privilege to publish the 8 authors and as well as Ishmeet, but an absolute privilege to also work with the stakeholders in the poetry community. I get shocked sometimes. Okay, how did I do this at first place? but yeah, I have to live with it now. And yes, upwards and onwards, as everyone says, right? So second book, as Ishmeet said. So yeah, that's
All
about
right.
it.
Yeah.
I
Thank
just
you so much.
one
Yes.
thing I want to urge everyone who's watching right now, who's watching this, poetry publishing is especially in India, is something that it's a lot of people don't take it up, like, because it's not profitable, because, and the most common refrain you'll hear amongst people is poetry doesn't sell, so why publish it? But there's wealth to be gained from reading poems, and the wealth is also in the feeling of holding a book of printed poems. And this is a culture that I would urge and ask all viewers today to not let die. Buy poetry, encourage poets like us to write more, so that we'll submit more and we'll publish more. And I just wanted to use this platform to say that. Read more, buy more, and that's about it from me. Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Sudeep. Thank you, Nirav, and thank you, Ishmeet. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that we are going to. There are more books to be given away. More copies of Isolation. So leave the writings that you have written during this lockdown in the comments below. Whether you're seeing this on Instagram or on YouTube, leave them in the comments below, and Ishmeet and Nirav will actually go through the poems that you've written during the lockdown and pick the best poems, and the winners get the copies get copies of Isolocation shipped to you. So yeah, leave them in the comments below, I can actually hold the book and show you. Sorry about the side. Show you the book one more time. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.